I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's now 6 o'clock. July the 23rd, 2024. We have one member absent.
Mr. Gaines.
Mr. Gaines, just show him for the record as being absent. Everybody else is here. We'll stand and say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Blake, would you lead us in a prayer?
Heavenly Father, Lord, we come before you today, Lord, first of all, thanking you for the rain. Lord, we appreciate it so much, Lord, and the healing that it's doing to our lands, Lord, and hopefully recharging the areas that need the water the most. Lord, we thank you for all that you do, and we thank you for everyone that's represented here, and we ask that if it's your will, you just continue to bless them, Lord. Bless our county, and bless our leadership, Lord. For the better servant of you. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we've established that we already got a quorum. We said the pledge. We're going to go to item number 4, which is the only item on this agenda. So we're going to discuss possible action, proposed draft rule amendments, and call a public hearing for the purpose of taking public comments on proposed rule changes. So this here is the proposed rules, is what y'all have in front of you that Mr. Ellis had sent to us. Everything that is in red will be the adopted wording, and that's probably what we're going to discuss right now. So I'm going to go over these one at a time. So number 1 is Rule 3.06, subsection A and D are amended to read as follows. And this first part right here, everything is in black. It is already there. So A, applications for permits or permit amendments other than test permits within 60 days from the date of which the district determines that an application is administratively complete. The application shall be set on the agenda for the board action at the board meeting. Such setting shall be no later than the next available board meeting. All right, that's your regular wording that's already there. So your add-on would be, this is what he's recommending, an application for a permit to withdraw less than 50 acre-feet of groundwater per year may be approved without a public hearing. An application for a permit to withdraw 50 acre-feet or more of groundwater per year shall be scheduled for a public hearing. All right. Has anybody got any discussion about that? You going to change any wording to it? To say anything different? Are y'all fine with that?
That's fine. Looks good to me.
That's even on agricultural wells.
Right.
They're exempt, aren't they? Agricultural.
Is agriculture exempt?
Oh, yes.
Are they included in this permit? This is applied to exempt wells as well? Or exempt wells excluded?
Exempt is domestic and livestock, yeah. And then the permit's okay for ag use, it would be the same, fall under the same 50 acre feet or less, because that's any kind of permit. It previously required a testing permit.
What was your question?
I didn't know if it was for a commercial well or if it was for agriculture
It's
as
for
well.
any permit.
All wells.
Has to be permitted.
Yeah, it doesn't say, so it's just going to cover everything. It says an application for a permit to withdraw less than 50 feet, so it doesn't specify, so I pretty much say that it's any permit. It doesn't make a difference.
The only problem that I see with it is if if a well goes dry on a farm or it collapses in, which it's been known to do, and they want to drill another well right next to it, and we're in good times, they'll have to go through this whole process just to do a replacement well?
I don't think so. I think in the rules,
You
because
can
I was
move
reading
so
it-
many feet, like,
Yeah,
without
it's
having
within so
to.
many feet,
That's where it's covered in
Mhm.
rules.
Yeah.
they can do it.
What is it, 300 feet or so?
I can't remember, I was just reading it
You
too.
can't remember.
The other thing is, if y'all want, between now and then, where we have the public hearing, if you want to get any, you have any questions for Greg or Dr. Bill, just go ahead and, y'all got his phone number? Everybody got their phone numbers?
I don't.
I can give them to you, but yeah, just call and ask them.
Just like with what we were talking about doing at the fort, would be another case. You know what I mean?
Yep. So, yeah, if you got any questions, feel free to call them, and between now and then, if you have any changes, this isn't the final deal, this is just a draft thing, so. Anybody got any other questions about that?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna move to the next item, which is D, board action, with no request for a contested case hearing. If no request for a contested case hearing is made, this is the add-on to this, by 5 p.m., 3 business days before the public hearing, the board shall issue a written order for a resolution reflecting its decision. If the board approves the application, the permit shall be an attachment to that written order or resolution. The board's decision shall be made within 60 days after the final hearing at which the application was considered. If the board votes to issue the permit at an amount less than the amount requested on the application, or votes to issue the permit with conditions that were not part of the original proposal, or denies the permit, the application may demand a contested case hearing by submitting a written demand to the district office no later than the close of the business on the 20th day after the board's vote.
So that 10th business day was struck. Does that
Yeah,
mean that that
exactly.
was added in and then it was
What he's doing is he's saying that he would rather see it as the
20 day?
20 days rather than 10. Giving you more,
10 days cuts it kind of short.
giving you more time. Is there anybody else that's got anything on that part? I think that's good.
Seems okay.
Move on to the next item, which is number 2, Rule 4.02. B is amended to read as follows. B, equipment required for establishing the quality of groundwater produced. All, it's going to add in word operable. Non-exempt use wells must have installed meters and monitoring equipment approved by the district from a list of approved vendors. This right here is going to be an add-on. A well is deemed to be operable unless the well plumbing and power source are disconnected from the wellhead, or the well casing is capped, or the well is plugged. All right, now your regular, this other stuff's already there. So monitoring equipment may include real-time monitoring equipment installed at the district's office at the well owner's expense. The meter and monitoring equipment installation must be inspected by the district, and schematic drawing of the installation provided to the district. Metering device failure must be reported to the district, and the district must approve an appropriate measuring alternative. The purpose of the approved meter and monitoring equipment is to ensure that the district has the capability to properly and accurately measure the amount of groundwater being produced or transported out of the district. And that's the end of that. So on this one section here, where it says a well is deemed to be operable unless the well plumbing power source are disconnected from the well head, or the well casing is capped, or the well is plugged. Y'all, any additions to that, or does that sound good?
Well, we need to consider this, I think. There's other ways of measuring these wells, and some of the people are doing that with the time versus gallons per minute pumped. An alternate method, especially when you're pumping sulfur water, corrosive water.
So it's what, time versus what?
Time versus the gallons per minute. Now, we haven't, there may be a meter that can withstand some of that corrosive material. At this point, I don't know for sure.
Not sure there is.
Yeah, that's what we're not sure of.
So if you were to say time versus gallons per minute, they're gonna know what you're talking about, or does it need to be, like detailed explained?
Well, that's the simplest way I could put it in that, but if you know you're pumping 1,000 gallons a minute and you pump 60 minutes, you can multiply that, that's how many gallons you pumped,
Okay.
And if you pump for 24 hours, then you, that amount times 24.
Randy, how is that measured? I mean, how, you're pumping, you're recognizing the time, but what is the documentation on that? How is it, how would I monitor how many minutes you pump?
I don't know how you would measure, if somebody
Okay,
calls
because I'm talking, and Marty, you go read the meters and things like this. How would that type of well be monitored?
We just go by what the meter reading it's saying, and then we times the volume. We do it by volume. We can do it by volume.
And that would be gallons per minute, right?
Gallons per minute.
Per hour.
So it is monitored in some, there is some monitoring on it.
There is, but it just depends,
Well, Jim Burton had been talking about this alternate method, right?
He has.
And I haven't talked to him personally about it, You may know more than that.
He added it to the mud well.
What?
He added that to the mud well, an on-off pump feature to the data that he
Okay, so you could tell when the
Yes,
pump's
so that
on.
has been added to the mud well
And
a week or two ago.
okay. And what does the mud well make? How much volume are you producing?
Oh, I don't have that. I
But-
just get the measurement, the date, and whether the pump is on or off. That he sends out the email to the water district as well.
Good.
And a lot of the farmers and ranchers, they'll text and say, turn the pump on.
At the time.
At the time, and turning it off now. They'll call or send a text to Jim, and this is the time that turned it on. This is the time I'm turning it off.
Is he tied in, Jar?
Zach's a really good one on that.
The size of the pump and what the pump can actually pump is what you're
Going off of.
Yeah,
If the pump can actually pump that.
right. If you get a pump that.
Monitoring.
Some of our pumps won't pump.
Yeah, that's right. That's secondary. You don't know unless you know the pump.
So that's the maximum capability of that pump.
Of that pump, I mean, you may have more, it
It
just
may
tells
pump
you.
less. But
It
it's,
tells you how
I think
much
that-
water you're gonna pay if you know what that pump is gonna pump.
If you need to
It
add
doesn't really tell you how
something
much.
there.
We may need to make that clear.
Just tells you how much you need.
So I'd ask Greg about. So we're gonna ask Greg to look at that and see if we need to add any other wordage to it to clean it up, or it needs to be added on as a R. Another alternate method would be the times versus gallons, but just talk to Greg about that. We'll clean that up.
Can I ask one other question? Okay, the very last sentence, because the purpose of the approved meter and monitoring equipment is to ensure that the district has the capability of promptly and accurately measure the amount of groundwater being produced or transported out of the district. What does transported out of the district mean?
First, they'd have to go through the thing, they'd have to have their regular permit. Then they would have to apply for a permit for transporting out of the district.
Okay, so those are different permits.
We have, yes, that's a
Yeah.
different permit.
Okay.
And nobody has one of those.
I just wanted to get that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
We got any other questions or anything about that?
I think that's so good if we're gonna clarify it.
Yeah. Yeah, see, just asking is that, or do we have to specify the wording on that?
Yeah. Oh, well, we can clarify that with Greg.
Yeah.
Because I had included that one, Jim's suggestion, I had included that to Greg, and so I guess he thought this would, cover it. But I'll clarify it because we need to make sure it's right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
To have a different way of
Metering.
reporting, monitoring.
Okay, we're gonna move now to the last one, which is 3. Rule 4.3 is amended by adding new subsection C to read as follows. So this whole paragraph here is new. This is C, drought production limits. The board may declare the district to be in a drought stage at any board meeting conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. During a drought stage, permittees may produce an amount of groundwater equal to the maximum amount produced in any one calendar year during the 3 preceding calendar years. Following a board declaration of a drought stage, the district shall in writing inform each permittee of the production limit for each permit. During a drought stage, the district will not accept any applications for a testing permit. The board may declare the end of the drought stage in any board meeting conducted in accordance with the Open Meeting Act. So, go ahead.
On this 3 years that he put, he said it was up to the board if he wanted to use 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. He just put 3 years in there, but that could be if y'all chose to have it a 5-year period or a 10-year period, then that was fine too.
I think it should be a 15-year on account of the CRP programs and people who have fallowed land for a few years or so and then put it back into production. I think this would be discriminating against somebody like that a lot. I'd like to see it 15 calendar years.
Well, I know that may make sense, because I know one place out there for several years, and it shows, the last couple of years it shows heavier pumping, but for a number of years, they weren't really irrigating that much. That happens to be on standard lane, but they just weren't irrigating that much. And for a couple of those years, when one individual had it, I'm not sure he irrigated any at all. So maybe what you're saying would make.
Because they're just looking at one calendar year. It's not an average of what's been produced, it's just one calendar year. So to me, I am in agreement. The range can be a wider range to allow, to give a more accurate picture. Right. I have a question on, so at a groundwater meeting, you can, but this is once we get a drought contingency plan and we have triggers and things like that. We don't just arbitrarily say we're in a drought situation. We have guidelines we're going by. Is that correct on this? Because it's saying that you can declare a drought at a meeting.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad statement, so,
Yeah.
might wanna think about that. I think when Charlie and us were talking about the drought contingency plan, there was actually some specifics in there, what actually would put you into that, the drought contingency plan. So,
What triggers?
yeah, what's
You have to
gonna
have
trigger?
triggers. And
So,
for a period of time, it's not just one day to the next you do
no,
it.
so if you were to adopt something like this, after you get your drought management plan, then you could come back and make an amendment to this to say whatever your trigger is or whatever to make it coincide.
But this whole thing to me is very broad, and it allows for you to do it, but then you have to have some guidelines on implementation, how you're gonna do it and what's gonna establish a drought, you know, the triggers, things up.
Did Greg write this up?
What he's wanting us to do is either get more specific with it or do something else, but anyway, it's gonna, this would be one of the things that we would, wanna put in the rules. If y'all decide you don't wanna put it in the rules and you decide that you're not gonna put it in the rules.
Well, could it be put in with a statement, you know, during the drought stage, based on the guidelines established in our in the drought contingency plan, but give it more information, because this to me is it doesn't really.
Well, it's a broad statement, but like right now, if you're saying, I'm in a drought right now, we're gonna put in drought, you would be doing the right thing because you're in a drought. So if that's the only thing that you have, this isn't gonna be there forever. So if this is the only thing that we can put for right now to take care of some, what we need to do as far as being in a drought without your drought contingency plan, that would be probably the idea of why this is there.
Well,
So once you get the drought contingency plan, then you mold this into that, is what he's trying to do, I think.
It would be a little more in-depth.
If you wanna get another opinion from Greg about it, I said we can let you talk to him or let everybody else talk to him when we're having this. We're probably gonna be talking to him when we have this meeting for this. So, but if y'all wanna change the wording, whatever y'all wanna do, it's up to the board what y'all wanna do with it.
I just feel it's broad.
It's broad.
Yeah.
Randy has the drought group. Is that coming along?
We got everything down except for and I talked to Dr. Bill today, it's gonna be probably in December when you get all that other information together. Once you get the science and stuff together, then it's gonna be good to go. Yeah,
The science.
that's all we're waiting for.
I'm not sure if y'all can hear me. This is Greg Ellis. I'm available to answer questions if you need me.
Hey, Greg, you kinda snuck up on us. There you go there. Hey, on this item number C, on that drought production limit, BJ had some questions about the broadness of it. Can you explain a little bit more about how this come about and what it's supposed to mean to the district?
Can he hear us?
Can you hear me?
Over here.
I think that you asked about the question about the background of this section. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, so BJ wants a little bit more information on, because it's kind of a broad statement.
This is not nearly as detailed as an eventual drought plan should be. but you don't want the drought plan to be in your rules anyway. You want to have a separate drought plan that talks about how to measure drought, when you know you're in drought, what triggers are going to start, what different stages. Most drought plans require cutbacks over time, but it's very complicated because when you say you're going to cut back, you have to decide you're going to cut back from what. People saying you're going to have to reduce your pumping by 30%. Well, 30% from what I pumped yesterday, from what I pumped last week, from what I pumped last month, from what I pumped last year. EAA, when they first had their first drought plan, it was done on a quarterly basis. And every permittee was required to predict how much of their permit they were going to pump each quarter of the calendar year. And if they were out during that quarter, then they were going to have to reduce their pumping from that number that they had predicted. Apparently it didn't work, they had to change it. And now their plan is on an annual basis. And even though they have the same problem that they're trying to maintain spring flow, that's very difficult to do on an annual basis. I can cut back my annual number by not pumping as much in November and December, which doesn't do any good for the springs in July and August. What Hayes Trinity is trying to do is they've declared a special management zone around Jacob's Well, which is another spring that has gone dry this summer and for 2 summers in a row. And they have limited the pumping in that area, and they have also prohibited any new wells from going into the same aquifer strata that is the source of water for Jacob's Well. And that's a geographic area. They've drawn a boundary around Jacob's Well that they thought the pumping in that geographic boundary wouldn't have an impact on the flow of Jacob's Well. So they have specific drought triggers based on how much flow there is in the 2 rivers that flow through the area. And when the flow of the air goes down, that means there's less recharge coming in. That means that there's going to be less water flowing through the aquifer to come out the springs. And so they put in limitations on how much people can pump. And in order to do limitations, they took the amount that they had pumped during the last 3 years and said, we're going to reduce you from that number. Now, I can't tell you if it's working or not. It's too new to say if it's working or not. I can tell you that Jacob's Well did dry up again. So I don't think it's working that as well as they had hoped. On top of all of this, there has to be some indication from the science we have, from the measurements we have, that implementing those cutbacks is going to achieve the goal of maintaining the spring flow. So far from what I've heard from Dr. Bill, that's not the case. That we could stop all pumping, and it would result in an additional 1 or 2 cubic feet per second flowing into the pool, which isn't very much.
1 to 8.
So what these rules do is simply says we're not going to let the problem get worse. We're not going to issue new permits. We're not going to increase permits. We're not going to allow people to pump more of their full permit amount. We're only going to allow them to pump the amount that they have pumped, at the maximum amount they pumped in 1 calendar year for the last, and this I put down 3 years. It could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be whatever number you want to pick. I think the biggest pumping years that we have had, probably since 2000, have been in 22 and 23. So going back 3 years easily covers that. And by doing that, you're avoiding harming anybody. You're not telling anybody you can't have enough water to do the business you have been doing, but you can't have any more. You can't continue to pump more than that. And finally, the bigger complication, the biggest complication for you all is you've got Brackettville pumping quite a bit of water that's only unregulated. You don't have it, you don't require them to get a permit. They claim an exemption for the permit requirement. We could probably argue that they're still subject to drought restrictions, but because the drought restrictions are generally tied to what your permit is, that's going to be difficult to do. And I think they can make a pretty good argument that because they don't have to have a permit, they don't have to follow the drought rules either. all of it, I understand your frustration. I understand the frustration of the people of Fort Clark. This is all very complicated. And what this paragraph is trying to do is say, let's just make sure we don't let the problem get any worse than it has been. And unless the board declare a drought stage, unless the board declare when they're out of the drought stage, at some point we can replace that with automatic triggers if you want. But it still doesn't accomplish the main goal, which is going to be to reduce pumping around the time or in time to maintain spring flow. And I can't draft that rule because I don't know how to accomplish that goal, and I don't know that anybody does know how to accomplish that goal.
Okay.
And Greg, so if we adopt these rules, or whatever we're gonna adopt on this next meeting, how long does it take for all this stuff to take effect? Is that immediate, or?
If you vote to propose these rules tonight, they can be published immediately, and they'll be ready for a public hearing at your August board meeting. Following the public hearing, then the board can adopt, not adopt, somewhat make some changes if they think, if the changes don't go too far and don't create a big substantive change in it, then we can go ahead and adopt the rules there. They would take effect immediately. Now, you couldn't declare a drought because that would, unless you put that on the agenda. And so until you have a rule in place that allows you to declare a drought and you have an agenda item to declare a drought, you can't do that. So if you want to try and do that at the August board meeting, you could, but it would have to be on the agenda contingent upon the rule passing. So yes, once you voted on the rule, that rule is in effect, and you can take any action these rules allow immediately after that, as long as it's done according to the Open Meetings Act, been properly posted on the agenda.
Okay.
Do you think it would make a difference? It says 3-year preceding years, whether it be 3 years or 15 years. It'd be basically the same.
I don't think it would, because I think that the biggest year for pumping for anybody is going to have been in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
22 and 23. But it's possible somebody pumped a lot more 15 years ago, in which case they could use that number if you make that number 15.
Right.
Now, I would say this. I think that you probably want to propose the most restrictive, which would, in my opinion, should be 3 years. Because when you get the public comment in, if somebody comes in and says, I think it should be 5 or I think it should be 10, you can easily change it to that number, and you haven't hurt anybody with that. I think that's not going to be so substantive change that somebody would have the ability to come in and say, no, they didn't, that wasn't properly posted, they should have reposted that. And we would come back the next month and ratify it anyway, just to be on the safe side. But if you start off saying it's going to be 15 years, then you want to narrow it all the way down to 3, and that might cut somebody out, they're going to be unhappy, and then they will say, if I'd known it was going to be 3 years, I should have said so. But they said it was going to be 15. So I think you could go from the more narrow proposed rule to a broader rule without violating the standards for adopting rules. But you can't go from a very broad rule down to a very narrow rule, I think, without having to republish.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask you this, Greg. Do you want to ask him something?
Well, I was just going to ask him, so if a young person whose family has farmland and a permitted well and it hadn't been in production in 20 years and they move back after college or after whatever they get done with doing in their life and they want to farm it, how would we do that? Because it will have had no pumping for the last 3 years.
Under this proposed rule, if you're in the middle of a drought, they would not be allowed to begin pumping until the drought ended. Now we can at some point we can put in a provision that allows us to create some sort of waiver provision for special circumstances, but those are very difficult to draft. Most waiver provisions are limited to emergency situations, something where you've got to go drill a well because if the nursing home is out of water and they have to have water, human health or the environment is at risk. There are some places where they just allow the board to waive the rules whenever they want to. Certainly the Texas Senate waives the rules on every bill that they consider. So, at that point, do you really have a set of rules, or do you have a set of suggestions that you listen to when you feel like it and don't listen to when you don't feel like it? So the waiver is always a possibility. I did not include that here. And you don't have a general waiver in your rules right now, but that's something that we could certainly add in the future.
Okay, Greg, another question. I'm representing MUD, and we've been in drought 2 years, and so we are at a reduced level. So anyway, because we're reduced, like right now, we are experiencing 12% reduction. We're in stage 3, which we want to go to 25%. So our last year, of course, 3 years ago would be our highest. But we're already reducing down, so this is still going to apply to us. But we're in a community where we have people who are, drinking water and livelihood. It's not agricultural. Is there going to be an exemption or something different for that?
Did you hear that?
I don't know.
Did you hear that, Greg?
Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting I have to tap this to talk.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this would also apply to the mud pumping, but it would allow the mud to pump the maximum amount that they have pumped at any point during the last 3 calendar years. I definitely would take a look and see if that number that year needs to go out further to cover a bigger pumping year at some point in the past, just to be on the safe side. But I believe your biggest pumping was, like you said, I think like 3 years ago, that would be there. You could pump up to that number. Now, I would hope that because Fort Clark and I hope Brackettville wants that spring to flow, that both of them would implement drought restrictions and encourage people not to use as much water so they don't have to pump as much water.
Well, we're doing that right now, and we have seen a reduction.
Right, but you're not going to be limited to the current reduction amount that you are pumping. You would be limited to the largest amount you pump
Which was 3 years ago.
over that 3-year period, or whatever length period you all decide you're going to finally adopt.
There's nothing in here, I don't see anything here, Greg, about enforcement of violations. If somebody was to violate this rule, what would be the consequences for that, and what's the enforcement?
Your standard enforcement rules would apply, which means that in the way that the enforcement should work is when we find a violation, we contact the person, we say you're in violation, you have exceeded your permit, we will settle with you for this violation if you pay this amount of, if you want to call it, I wouldn't call it a penalty, I would still call it settlement, but if they pay a certain amount of money to the district in order to make up for the fact that they overpumped their permit, then you'll settle for that. And if they won't settle, then we have to go to court and get a court to enforce it. That court can give us up to $10,000 per day per violation.
And that's in
most
our,
people quickly settle.
that's in our, when we approve the budget each year, we approve the cost, violation cost. So that's already in place.
Yeah, but the enforcement rules are already in the district rules.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Greg, I didn't think about this earlier this is Janelle, I didn't think about it when we were talking earlier. But I know of a couple of instances, like someone had decided in a certain year, say in this 3-year period, that because it was so extremely hot and they were just going to let the land lay fallow for that year until we began to get rains again. Okay, then they didn't pump anything, so that would cut them out of that, in other words, the 3-year average. And then another thing, you remember back when the CRP thing through the government was such a popular thing for farmers to use. They get paid so much to take their farmland out of production.
Yes, I do remember that.
Okay.
And anybody who was participating in that or chose not to plant that year or whatever, that year obviously would not be the year that counts. And they should take a look at all of their records and what they have done over time and let the board know how many years they need to go back so that they're covered, so that they're able to go ahead and pump water during the drought. So if we need to go back 4 years or 5 years to be able to cover them, they need to come let us know then.
Right. Okay.
You
The same thing that I asked.
You can also have your records.
Basically, it's the
What
same
the
thing.
max year was for every single permittee. And the rule said, what you would do with any third drought, is you'd send something out to them saying, we're now in a drought, and this is the maximum amount you're going to be allowed to pump during this drought, each calendar year. And, if you look at those, if you look through the records, I think it should be fairly easy for you to pick out how much the maximum amount each permittee pump each year, and how long ago that was.
So you just wouldn't do it off the life of the well and make it easier? Wouldn't that make it so much easier than doing all this?
Do it for the life of the well?
Yeah, 'cause
Right,
we've
for the
never, like,
existence of the well.
I mean,
How long it is.
it's so much easier than going 3 years, going 5 years, going 15. I mean, because
Can we do that, Greg?
I don't think you have records for the life of the well.
well, I'm talking about since we've been recording records, if this is going to be the most water we've ever pumped, in our recorded history.
You can go back to the first year that the district collected that information, yes.
There you go.
I just hate to limit somebody on their property. I mean, if they want to drop a pump down there and pump for their livestock, they'll be in violation because it's a permitted well. Am I wrong?
Yeah, up to 3 years.
Yeah, they drop, and they just want to put a water trough on a well that they already own,
Yeah. And it's permitted well.
and it's a permitted well, they'll be in violation. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Because you know what I mean, if they want to water their cattle, if they're grazing it, their well goes down and that one's there, you shouldn't be able to just say, well, that well's no good, you can't even pump it for a water trough. I don't know.
Yeah.
They would be in violation, wouldn't they?
Under this proposed rule, if they didn't have any pumping during that whatever length period of time that you picked, then that's correct. They would not be allowed to. They would not be. Their allowed pumping for that year would be zero.
So
But again, I think we can easily find the number of years we have to go back and make sure that doesn't happen. That everybody that owns a well and has a permit, has pumped that permit at any point, is going to be able to pump at least that amount of water. We just have to find out from the records how many years we have to go back.
yeah, we just need to go back to the records.
And we could go back to the beginning of the district. You go back to the very first year of the district collected records if you needed to, or wanted to. This district has all that information.
Anybody know what year that is?
2003, wasn't it? Was that, I don't know.
Let me ask you this, Greg. So, being that the board and other boards, usually if a person feels that something's wrong, he has a right to appeal. I would think that if somebody wanted water and the district told him something, that he would have the right to appeal, right?
Well, certainly they would have the right to come sue the district if they think that their rights have been violated. And you also have the ability to come change the rules if you need to in order to accommodate for special circumstances. Again, we don't have a waiver provision in your rules right now. At least I don't think we do. But you could add that at some point if you really need to.
What do you think?
I think we should make it longer years.
I agree with you.
I mean,
Yeah.
Go back 20 years.
So I think
if we never did it in 2003, I guess that'd be 21 years.
Did we
Right?
start keeping the records in 2003? Do you know?
Some
some of them.
Well,
Well, they probably, they had
we go
older.
back to 2003.
I believe so.
Yeah, maybe.
It's on there. I would have to check.
Yeah.
But basically, everything else is fine in the paragraph. Other than the years.
Yeah, that's my main concern.
So that's the only hiccup, Greg, is how many years it would be.
Well, pick a number and let me know, and we'll just change that number to whatever you want us to say. That's what we'll propose.
I proposed from the creation of the water district.
I agree with you.
I agree. Just make it easy.
Yeah.
Change it to that. Yeah.
Did you hear that, Greg?
I heard a suggestion that we would take back to the creation of the district. Is that the consensus with the board?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Well, I think probably the best way to do this, so that there's a solid record of this, is to have a motion to amend the proposed rules to that number and get a second and a vote on that. And then we'll need another motion and a second and a vote to propose these draft rules as amended.
Is that what you want to do?
You want me to make a motion?
Yes.
Right.
I make a motion that we change the wording in the rule to follow the 1 calendar year could be during the life of the groundwater district, since the creation of the groundwater district, whatever the technical terminology is there, to be advised by our attorney.
Okay, does that satisfy that, Greg?
How about we make the motion back to the first year that the district has complete records
There you
for
go.
that calendar year? And then I'll like to figure out what year that is, we'll write that year into the proposed rule.
So moved.
I think that was 2021, that might have been, 2001, that might have been 2002.
Okay, I've got a
Or
motion.
we could just say 20 years, we could take us back to 2004.
I'll second the motion.
But I know we had records beginning at least in 2004, but I don't know what the records look like for 2001 and 2002.
Yeah.
Just make it 20 years.
That's what she did.
Oh.
So I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the item? Take a vote. All, everybody in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Ayes have it. I'll entertain a second motion. What was the second motion, Greg?
Well, if the other provisions are okay as drafted, you propose this as drafted, then motion would be to propose these rules and call a public hearing for the next board meeting to consider final adoption.
That item number 2, I don't know if you were listening when we were talking or discussing about that. Where down in there it says the monitoring equipment may include real-time monitoring equipment. Would that be the same thing as time versus gallons per minute?
I think that the meter provision allows for any credible method to measure the use. Now, Jim, may want to take a look and see if it's something we need to tweak there, and we could probably do that when we adopt the rules finally in August. But as drafted, if we know how long the pump is running and we know what the capacity, efficiency of the pump is, we can calculate exactly how much it would cost.
Okay.
So there would have, that would have to be something where we have a timer. So that real-time measuring would be a timer of some kind. If you have a diesel engine but you don't have a clock on it, if you don't know how long it's run, there's no way of telling how much they pump. Unless they have a meter.
Yeah. Well, that was the only other thing. That was it.
Well, that's something, if we need to tweak that language, we can do that easily at the August board meeting. Most of that provision obviously is current language, current rule. We're not changing it. The only thing that's changed is the red underlined part.
Yeah. Okay, everything else sounds good, so can you give me the wordage one more time about a motion?
The motion would be to approve these rules as amended for publication and proposal and schedule a public hearing at the the August board meeting. The regular August board meeting, that's what it should be.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion. No, I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and I've got a second. Seconded by Stan. Randy,
Right.
is there any further discussion? All right, everybody, vote on it. Aye. So moved. Motion passes.
Okay. We will get these published and we will get them, we get the public hearing called and the notice published of the public hearing. And we will see what happens next August.
Yes, sir.
If you hear any comments, please make sure, encourage people to give us comments in writing. And if you hear any comments or something that you would like to change, don't hesitate to contact me. It's probably best these days to send me an email so I have it in writing someplace. And I can back up and find it if I need to.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank y'all. Have a
Yeah,
great night.
you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Move to the next item on the agenda, is item number 5, which is adjournment. Your motion?
I think the adjourn.
All right, I got a motion, I got a second. Everybody in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank everybody for coming.